Hi, welcome to our 6-part video series. In this video, I'm going to outline the 3 underlying reasons why women with polycystic ovaries are truly struggling to lose weight. If you are a woman that has been told that you have polycystic ovaries, you will probably also have been told by your doctor that your only options for management are weight loss and going on the pill. What they failed to tell you is that a woman with polycystic ovaries, you're probably going to struggle with your weight for the rest of your life. There are, don't get me wrong, there are the skinny sisters around who, for whatever reason, they're insulin resistant, don't get me wrong, but their body has chosen not to put on the weight. If you have polycystic ovaries, you have insulin resistance. That's just how it goes. But most women with polycystic ovaries are bigger. They have troubles with their weight. I'm one of them. Losing weight for women with polycystic ovaries is so difficult that in some cases many feel that it is actually totally futile and they just kind of end up giving up on the dream of being healthy. Overweight or obese women with polycystic ovaries are often seen by society as greedy and lazy and without self-control, but we know that is not the case. We know that the reality is that these ladies, including myself, they've tried every diet under the sun. They eat low fat, they eat low calorie, they exercise, they do eat healthy things, they do all the things that you should be doing, right? And the problem is we've actually been told the wrong thing. And the reality is that chances are, after doing all of these dieting things, this woman is now probably heavier than when she started out. And how do I know this? It was me, it was my sisters, it's my friends and my colleagues. Polycystic ovaries affects 1 in 4 women. So chances are, you know lots of people with it. There are actually some underlying reasons why these women with polycystic ovaries cannot lose weight. And I am here to tell you that actually you can lose weight really successfully, long term, with polycystic ovaries with the right strategies. But here we go. 3 underlying reasons why women with polycystic ovaries cannot lose weight. The main reason is she is insulin resistant. We'll start right at the beginning. Polycystic ovaries is commonly diagnosed either by a scan showing multiple cysts on the ovary or a blood test showing low progesterone and high aldosterone or testosterone levels, or both of these. But actually these are just the symptoms of the problem. The underneath all of this is this insulin resistance. And this happens when your body's going through this onslaught of high insulin levels stemming from this high carbohydrate diet, and eventually your body just becomes insulin resistant to protect itself from being overfilled with sugar. These high levels of insulin also act as pro-inflammatory chemicals, so your entire system becomes really inflamed. And you end up with lots of internal damage, and this is why women with polycystic ovaries are at much higher risk of getting heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and this is not okay. This is all preventable stuff. High insulin levels also act like testosterone on some cells, which means you end up with poor egg development, poor breast development, which can affect breastfeeding if and when you choose to try and do so. You get male pattern hair growth, male pattern baldness, and also bigger muscle development. That one I don't mind so much. I have very strong hands thanks to my polycystic ovaries. These high levels of sugar, and particularly the fructose in the diet, can lead to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this is becoming so bad in Western society that people are actually needing liver transplants for it. So if you have been told that your liver enzyme tests or your LFTs aren't good or they're slightly deranged, you need to take this as a really massive warning that your liver is under attack from this sugar. You need to get that out of your life. The good news about fatty liver disease is that it's actually reversible very quickly if you go on a low carbohydrate diet, presuming that you manage to start this before the permanent scarring occurs. Insulin resistance is the foundation of most chronic and deadly diseases that Western society is now plagued with. Polycystic ovaries is only one of them, but there is no doubt that insulin resistance is the key cause of polycystic ovaries. If you are insulin resistant and still eating carbs, your weight will not permanently shift because insulin is that gatekeeper to those fat cells. When you are insulin resistant, your insulin levels are higher than sort of a non-resistant person. Your blood sugars are still steady, but to keep them steady, your body's having to make more and more and more insulin to keep those blood sugars steady. This means that there are more guards on those doors, stopping your body from accessing those fat stores. The number 2 underlying reason why women with polycystic ovaries can't lose weight is they've been subject to poor diet advice. Unfortunately, it is everywhere. The wonderful food pyramid that we have all been taught to follow was actually put together by big agro businesses and some politicians. There was actually very little to no scientific study behind that. Nothing that would stand up to today's scrutiny. Of course, to get your symptoms of polycystic ovaries under control, you've been told to lose weight, which is fine. We all try it, right? But sadly, the majority of us, the advice on weight loss that we get told are based on 2 old and very inaccurate ideas. One is the low fat, high carb, and the other is that less is more. The less you eat, the more you'll lose. And the problem is neither of those things are actually accurate. The problem with low fat, high carb is multifaceted with women with polycystic ovaries. The carbs simply stimulate the release of more and more insulin, which means you're not going to be able to access that stored energy that you have in your fat cells. And then being low fat, it's not going to be satisfying or filling, and you're going to feel hungry all of the time. That, of course, is going to mean that you're more likely to cheat, and you're more likely to beat yourself up, and you're more likely just to say, why can't you just eat the stored fat? Clearly there's food there. And it becomes really a bad way of thinking. And you may also get the advice to eat 6 or 7 times a day to keep your blood sugars stable. And the reality is, all this actually does is keep that insulin level high all day, and it never gives your body a rest. With the low carb, high fat diet, on the other hand, you'll naturally find that you're just not as hungry all the time. And you'll be able to eat 2 to 3 times a day without being starving hungry in between times. And this gives your body this chance to lower those insulin levels. And then suddenly you can start accessing those fat stores. Less is not more. You know, you've tried all those low-calorie diets around, and I know I have. And I have felt very hungry and tired and grumpy. And eventually my body always wised up. I would drop my calories and my body would I wouldn't change anything. I'd still be eating those same amount of calories. And suddenly my body would get to a certain point and then just start putting the weight on again. This happens because your body is aware that you're starving. And those low calorie days eventually spur on your body to lower that basal metabolism, which means suddenly you can actually start gaining weight on less calories. And this was a great idea when we experienced famines. The problem is we aren't in a famine, and an overweight person is not starving. Your cells may feel like they're starving. They think they're starving because what we're doing to them is making them hungry. It makes you want to eat because we're keeping those insulin levels high all the time. One of the most effective ways of getting your body to access and use its own fat stores, once it's realized it's not starving, and then it will actually rev up its metabolism again with this 3-pronged attack. 1, start a ketogenic diet and wait for your body to build those extra mitochondria that it needs to start living really well with fat as your fuel source. And then once your body is adapted, you can start reducing your eating window or the numbers of hours within a day that you eat. Many start sort of moving breakfast backwards and back, further and further back until suddenly they can just do lunch and dinner. And then once you can manage that, you can start doing intermittent fasting and extended fasts. And this is so different to starving yourself. Don't get me wrong. If you've had a bad relationship with food, then maybe fasting is not for you. I urge you, if you're going to be attempting fasting and you've had those issues, you need to get some support, some professional counselling or something to help you with that relationship around food. Fasting is a deliberate thing, and it's very, very different to just starving yourself. It's not about depriving your body of fuel or food. And once your body is keto adapted, it won't notice the difference between eating fat that you're feeding in your mouth and eating fat off your body. It will just switch very happily between the two. But you do need to get that keto adaptation happening first. And when fasting is done in a healthy, respectful fashion, it can be a really powerful tool for women with polycystic ovaries. The third big underlying reason why a woman with polycystic ovaries can't lose weight is she's actually eating too much dairy. There's a really strong link between dairy intolerance, insulin resistance, and polycystic ovaries. Generally speaking, butter is still fine. It is pretty much all dairy fat, and it's usually fine, but things like cheese, milk, and other dairy products, your cream cheeses, those sorts of things, will spike your insulin levels disproportionately high compared to the amount of sugar that's in them. So it's related to some other chemicals in the dairy that also triggers your insulin response. And seeing as we're trying to keep those insulin spikes as low and steady as we can, I do recommend that you knock out dairy at least for a couple months and see if it helps. And if you can't knock it out completely, at least cut it right down, and just be aware that when you're eating it, it may well be triggering that insulin issue for you. It doesn't have to be a permanent change, but if you get it out totally for a month and then try it again and see if you react to it. Watch out for runny noses or upset tummies or cramps or lethargy, any of those sorts of feelings that may actually show that you're not as tolerant to dairy as maybe you thought you were. So what is the perfect diet for polycystic ovaries and weight loss? Well, as I've said in my previous videos, which I really recommend you jump in and have a look, women with polycystic ovaries do best on a low carbohydrate, high fat, moderate protein diet. You need to be getting those proteins in, because the last thing you want to be losing is your muscle mass. The more muscle mass you lose, the lower your basal metabolism will go. So we want to keep that muscle mass nice and high and teach that body to burn fat as fuel. And that is honestly the best way that you will find to lose weight. And I have tried everything, and keto has honestly been a lifesaver for me. So I encourage you to share these videos with people that you know, watch the other videos that are there, and download the ebooks, and I'll see you in the next video.